The stale scent of coffee and disinfectant hung in the air of the hospital waiting room, a smell I'd become all too familiar with. I shifted in the stiff plastic chair, the kind designed to discourage comfort, to remind you that you weren't here to stay. My phone buzzed in my hand for the 10th time in an hour. It was Jessica. Again. I let it go to voicemail, the weight of my disinterest a solid, cold stone in my gut. Whatever was happening with Jessica, whatever drama was unfolding in her world, didn't matter. Not here, not now. My entire focus was on the door to the ICU, where my older brother, David, was fighting for his life. A car accident on a rain-slicked I-95. A simple drive home from work that had turned into a nightmare. He was stable, the doctors said, but critical. The next 48 hours were everything. Jessica was his wife, my sister-in-law. For 10 years, she'd been a constant, buzzing presence in our family. She was dramatic, emotionally volatile, and had a way of making every situation about her. When David got his promotion, she lamented the longer hours. When my father passed away, she'd sobbed so loudly during the eulogy you'd have thought she was the bereaved widow. We'd all learned to manage her, to placate her. David, with his infinite, quiet patience, was her anchor. And now that anchor was in a medically induced coma. So, her frantic calls, her texts filled with 1,000 variations of, "What's happening?" And, "Why won't anyone update me?" felt like background noise. A distracting, irritating hum in the face of a genuine crisis. My mother, her face etched with a map of sleepless nights, sat beside me, her hand trembling slightly in mine. This was what mattered. This silence, punctuated by the steady beep of a distant EKG. This was real. Later that evening, after convincing my mom to go home and get some real rest, I was alone in the waiting room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My phone lit up once more. Jessica. A surge of frustration, hot and sharp, rose in my chest. I decided to answer. I needed to shut this down, to get her to understand the gravity of the situation, to stop her self-centered onslaught. Sarah, finally. Oh my God, why has no one been answering? I'm going out of my mind here. Her voice was a high-pitched wail, grating on my last nerve. Jessica, listen to me, I said, my voice low and deliberately calm. David is in a coma. Mom is shattered. I am barely holding it together. We will update you when there is an update. Your constant calling isn't helping. It's making it worse. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. How can you say that? He's my husband. I know he is, I said, the exhaustion making me cruel. But right now, your hysterics don't matter. None of it matters. Just, let us breathe. Let the doctors work. We'll call you. I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call and powered off my phone, plunging myself into a blessed, silent isolation. In that moment, I believed it completely. The feud, the annoyance, the decade of rolled eyes and muttered complaints about Jessica, it all felt so trivial, so insignificant. It was background static in the symphony of our family's crisis. Whatever had happened between us, whatever friction there was, truly didn't matter. All that mattered was the hope that David would open his eyes. 2 days later, he did. It was a miracle, the nurses said. He was weak, disoriented, his body a canvas of bruises and broken bones, but he was conscious. He was lucid. The relief that washed over my mother and me was a physical force, warming the cold waiting room we'd inhabited for what felt like an eternity. We were allowed in to see him, one at a time. When it was my turn, I approached his bed slowly. His face was swollen, one eye nearly shut, but the other one focused on me, and a corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Hey, trouble," he rasped, his voice a dry whisper. Tears I'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. I took his hand, careful of the IV line. "Hey, Dave, you gave us one hell of a scare." He tried to nod, wincing at the movement. "Jess," he managed to get out. "She's fine," I said, the lie coming easily. "We've been updating her. She's just worried." I couldn't bring myself to tell him about her incessant calls, about our argument. It didn't matter. He was awake. That was the only headline. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When he opened them, his gaze was clearer, more intent. "No, Sarah, need to tell you. It can wait, Dave. Just rest." "No," he insisted, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. "It's important. My phone, the accident, did they find my phone?" I shook my head. "I don't know. The car was totaled. I have your personal effects from the hospital, it's just your wallet and watch." "Why, what's on your phone?" He took a shallow, pained breath. "A backup. A cloud backup. Of everything. Photos. Documents. He paused, his good eye searching my face. Sarah, you have to get it. You have to access it. The password, it's the same as my old laptop. Thunderbird 72 feet. Okay, I'll look into it, I soothed him, patting his hand. Don't worry about it now. You don't understand, he whispered, a sudden, surprising urgency in his broken voice. There are things about Jessica. Things you need to know. Before she, but the effort was too much. A wave of pain must have crashed over him, and he groaned, his body tensing. The monitor beside his bed beeped a little faster. A nurse came in, her demeanor professionally calm but firm. I think that's enough for now, she said, gently ushering me out. He needs to rest. I left the room, my mind reeling. Things about Jessica. What did that mean? Was it about her spending? Her emotional instability? It seemed like such a bizarre thing for him to fixate on the moment he woke from a coma. Yet, the intensity in his eyes was undeniable. It wasn't the look of a man worried about credit card bills. Back home, fueled by a morbid curiosity and the direct request from my brother, I logged into his cloud account. Thunderbird 72 feet worked. The interface opened, a digital treasury of my brother's life. There were thousands of photos, videos of family vacations, scanned copies of old tax returns. It was a mundane, orderly digital existence. I felt a pang of guilt, sifting through his private life, but his words echoed in my head, things you need to know. I started with the most recently modified folders. There were work documents, spreadsheets, the usual debris of a corporate life. And then I saw it. A folder, tucked away inside another folder named Home Office, itself buried within a directory for home renovation ideas. It was labeled JA Security. My heart began to thud a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. JA, Jessica Ann. I opened the folder. Inside were PDFs. Dozens of them. Bank statements, but not from their joint account. These were from an offshore bank, the Cayman Islands. The account was in Jessica's name. The balances made me dizzy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then, there were wire transfer records. Large, regular sums, all flowing from David's business account into this offshore vault. They were dated over the last 3 years. My breath hitched. This was more than just secret savings. The amounts were too large, the secrecy too absolute. This was embezzlement, on a massive scale, but it was the next file that turned my blood to ice. It was a scanned document, a life insurance policy. It was for David, taken out 2 years ago. The beneficiary was Jessica. The payout was $5 million. A cold dread, sharper and more terrifying than any fear I'd felt in the hospital waiting room, began to creep into my bones. The accident. The rain-slicked road. The police said it was a single-car accident, that David's car had simply veered off the road and hit a tree. They'd speculated he might have fallen asleep at the wheel or been distracted. But David was a careful driver. Meticulous. He never texted and drove. He always wore his seatbelt. He'd once told me he considered driving a full-time focus activity. My mind, against my will, began to connect the dots. The embezzlement, the life insurance, Jessica's hysterical phone calls. What if they weren't the cries of a worried wife? What if they were the frantic probes of someone trying to gauge what we knew? What if she was trying to get to the hospital not to be by his side, but to ensure he never left it? I felt nauseous. This was paranoia. This was the plot of a bad movie. I was sleep-deprived and emotionally wrecked. I was imagining things. I dug deeper, my fingers trembling on the keyboard. There was another subfolder, password protected. I tried Thunderbird 72 feet again. It didn't work. I tried variations. Jessica's birthday, their anniversary, nothing. Then, on a whim, I typed security 1 foot. The folder opened. It contained a single audio file. The label was a date from 6 months ago. With a feeling of utter surrealism, I clicked play. The audio was slightly muffled, but the voices were unmistakable. David's, calm and measured. And Jessica's, sharp and venomous. Jessica, you think you can just cut me off? After everything I've done for you? After everything I've put up with? David, it's not cutting you off, Jessica. It's called a budget. You've bled my business dry. I've seen the transfers, the offshore account. A sharp intake of breath. Jessica, you've been spying on me. David, it's my company. You were stealing from me. From us. Jessica. A cold, mocking laugh. It's our money, David. And you're so naive. You have no idea what's coming. If you try to leave me, if you try to expose me, I will destroy you. I will take everything. I've made sure of that. David, is that a threat? Jessica, it's a promise. You'll be ruined, or worse. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The recording ended. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the only sound the frantic pounding of my own heart. This wasn't paranoia. This was a premonition. David had known. He'd known she was dangerous. He'd been gathering evidence, protecting himself. And he'd hidden it all because he knew that if anything happened to him, we would need to see the truth. The memory of my phone call with Jessica, of my dismissive, arrogant thought, whatever happened didn't matter, came back to me with the force of a physical blow. I had been so wrong. It had all mattered. Every argument, every red flag we'd dismissed as just Jessica being Jessica, every dollar she'd taken, every threat she'd made, it had all been leading to this. And my brother, in his methodical, quiet way, had been building a case, not for a divorce but for his own survival. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. It was all circumstantial. A recording obtained without consent, financial documents I'd accessed without authorization. It would be my word against hers, and she was the grieving wife. I looked like the jealous, meddling sister. I had to get back to the hospital. I had to talk to David. I had to confirm my horrifying theory. When I arrived, the atmosphere had shifted. My mother was in the hallway, her face pale, talking to a doctor. Jessica was there too. She saw me, and her eyes, puffy and red-rimmed, narrowed for a fraction of a second before welling up with fresh tears. "Sarah, thank God you're here," she wailed, moving to hug me. I stiffened, stepping back. The doctor gave me a sympathetic look. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice tight. "There's been a development," the doctor said carefully. "David's condition has stabilized, but we've discovered a concerning issue. His blood work shows traces of a powerful sedative, one that was not prescribed by any of his medical team." The world tilted. "What?" "It's a drug called midazolam," the doctor continued. "In his weakened state, even a small dose could have been fatal. We caught it because his respiratory rate dropped precipitously. We've administered a reversal agent, and he's stable again, but we are treating this as a deliberate act. The police have been notified." I looked at Jessica. She was sobbing into a tissue, her shoulders shaking. "Who would do this?" she cried. "Who would want to hurt my David when he's already like this?" The performance was masterful, but I saw it. I saw the cold, calculating flicker in her eyes as she glanced at me over the top of her tissue. She had tried to finish the job. The car accident hadn't worked, so she had come here, to his bedside, and tried to administer a lethal dose herself. She had used the chaos, the grief, the constant coming and going of nurses, as her cover. The police arrived, a detective, a woman with a sharp, intelligent face named Detective Miller. She took statements from my mother, from me, from the nursing staff. When she spoke to Jessica, Jessica delivered a heart-wrenching soliloquy about her love for David, her fear, her confusion. She was perfect. I knew I had to act. I asked to speak with Detective Miller privately. In a small, sterile family conference room, I told her everything. I showed her the files from the cloud backup. I played her the audio recording. I watched her professional composure shift from polite attention to intense focus. "This is significant," she said slowly, her eyes scanning the bank statements. "It establishes motive, a very powerful one, but proving she administered the drug is another matter. There are no cameras in the patient rooms. We'll test her for residue, but if she was careful." "She's always careful," I said, my voice hollow. "She's been planning this for years." We went back out into the hallway. Jessica was still there, huddled with my mother. Detective Miller approached her. "Mrs. Davis," she said, her tone neutral. "We'd like you to come down to the station to answer a few more questions. We can do it voluntarily, or I can place you under arrest." Jessica's head snapped up. The tears stopped instantly. The mask of the grieving wife melted away, replaced by a cold, hard fury. "Arrest? For what? My husband is lying in there, fighting for his life, and you're harassing me." "The questions pertain to financial documents we've become aware of," Detective Miller said calmly. "And an audio recording of a conversation between you and your husband." The change in Jessica was instantaneous and terrifying. It was as if a demon had been unleashed. All the drama, the volatility we had dismissed for a decade, coalesced into a pure, undiluted rage. "You," she hissed, her gaze locking onto me. "You pathetic little witch. You couldn't stand that he loved me more than you. You had to snoop. You had to stick your nose in where it didn't belong. My mother gasped, stepping back. Jessica, what are you saying? I'm saying your son was a fool. Jessica spat, her voice rising to a shriek that echoed down the sterile hallway. Nurses and orderlies stopped to stare. A boring, predictable fool with more money than sense. He was supposed to die in that car. It was supposed to be clean. A tragic accident, but he survived, the stubborn bastard. So I had to come here and look at his broken face and finish it myself. The confession hung in the air, stark and horrifying. She was so consumed by her anger, by the shattering of her perfect plan, that she didn't seem to care about the detective standing right there, about the witnesses. She had been holding it in for so long, the truth had exploded out of her. He was going to leave me. He was going to take everything. After everything I did for him. I built that social circle for him. I made that house a home. I was entitled to that money. And the insurance, that was my retirement plan. My escape from his boring, miserable life. Detective Miller didn't need to hear more. She formally placed Jessica under arrest, reading her rights as she clamped handcuffs on her wrists. Jessica didn't struggle. She just stared at me with a look of such profound, venomous hatred that I felt it like a physical blow. You think you've won, she sneered as they led her away. You haven't won anything. I'll see you in hell, Sarah. And then she was gone. The hallway was silent, save for my mother's soft, shocked weeping. The fluorescent lights buzzed their same, indifferent tune. The aftermath was a blur of police procedures, news vans, and a crushing emotional exhaustion. David, when he was finally strong enough to be told, was devastated but not entirely surprised. The man I'd seen in the recording was the man he had become, a man who knew he was married to a predator. The legal proceedings that followed were long and painful. Jessica, on the advice of her lawyer, eventually took a plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming. The financial records, the insurance policy, the recorded threat, and her own spontaneous confession in the hospital hallway. She was convicted of attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, the sedative, and multiple counts of embezzlement. She is now serving a 25-year sentence. David recovered, physically. The emotional scars, the betrayal from the woman he had loved and trusted, will take much, much longer to heal. We don't talk about Jessica much. The mere mention of her name casts a shadow over the room. I often think back to that moment in the waiting room, to my absolute conviction that the past, our history with Jessica, was irrelevant. I was so arrogantly, catastrophically wrong. The past is never just the past. It's the foundation upon which the present is built. Every slight, every secret, every hidden resentment is a crack in that foundation. And I learned, in the most shocking way possible, that if you ignore those cracks for long enough, the entire structure can collapse on you without warning. What followed didn't just shock me. It shattered my understanding of trust, of family, and of the quiet, calculating evil that can hide behind a familiar face. The crisis in the hospital was just the tremor. The real earthquake was the truth, and it revealed a fault line that had been running through our lives for a very, very long time.